We're seeing a new America on the horizon.
If Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, what would our response be? And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran.
You must totally reject political violence of any kind.
I certainly don't incite violence.
Knock the crap out of them.
I'd like to punch him in the face. Somebody criticized me the other day because they asked me what I do, and I said, I'm going to bomb the shit out of them.
Always lies that they tell.
The system is designed to work exactly the way it is, and wealth disparity is only going to continue to increase.
Trump writing on Truth Social, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will.
As long as there are people with that kind of wealth and power, there will continue to be atrocities.
Demand them all go to prison. It's rich who are, turns out, pedophiles and baby eating. We don't want that. None of us do.
You know, we stand around clutching our pearls saying, oh, this can't happen, this can't happen.
Iran fighting back, with smoke rising from the U.S. embassy there.
Going after Minneapolis, saying he's going to take Greenland, taking the president of Venezuela.
As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Hey, okay, you're the president, open up the files. And now they're saying, oh, we can't open up the files. We choose not to open up the files.
Okay, so no, this system cannot be fixed and needs to be dismantled.
Graham is right. When she says there's no way we're going to vote ourselves out of this, she's absolutely right.
Okay, when I first heard about them, I was aware that I had seen this guy Epstein photographed with Trump at various parties, and they're like they look like they're good buddies. And then when I heard that the guy had an island of his own, and that was just from hearing it and seeing it online.
There is some other news we're following tonight. Billionaire Jeffrey Epstein is expected to appear in federal court in Lower Manhattan tomorrow following new charges related to alleged sex crimes involving minors.
In a way, I wasn't surprised because I know that a lot of people who are, mostly it's men, who have certain twists and turns in their lack of character, will gravitate toward a lot of fantasy play, but most people don't have. If the people don't have the money to make those fantasies come true, it's sort of like a sexual Disneyland for them.
We have looked further into the president's past, where there are more allegations about the way he behaved towards women. Much of it centres on his hometown in the late 80s and 90s. We met someone who was there. He doesn't want to be identified. He says Donald Trump hosted and attended parties after modelling events. The models were young. The men were much older.
There was a lot of cocaine around. There was a lot of alcohol. They were all older men. These were guys who could easily be their fathers 2 times over. You had men in their 50s, 60s on up. It was kind of like a feeding frenzy. The girls were there as consumables. Let's just call it that.
And when you say consumed, do you mean that the men were having sex with them?
Yes, that's the whole point of it. They were there to get laid.
We've spoken to a number of sources who saw Donald Trump at the parties. Most paint a similar picture.
Just describe to us the way Donald Trump behaved at these parties.
I mean, this guy it was like a predator in action. We do know that he was having sex with them.
How do you know that?
Because the next day or days after we'd hear about it, he'd brag about it to his friends, and it would get around that he scored, maybe 1 or 2 girls at a time, which is what he loved to do.
But what's most shocking is the age of some of the models at the parties.
There was girls, I would say 14, 15 years old, from Europe, the European girls.
They were 14 or 15?
There were girls that were 14, 15 years old, for sure. I mean, I didn't run up and say, how old are you? But They looked younger than I was, and I was 17. You just knew because of what they were wearing and how they would hold themselves.
And these girls are all like, anywhere from 14, 15, 16 years old. There was very few girls above the age of 19 there.
And you saw Donald Trump with these girls who were that young, 15, 16?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they're standing around with them, ogling them.
It was just disgusting. I felt like I was in the presence of a shark we're getting ready to roll his eyes back in his head and bite me. That's how I felt. It was just like, get the hell out of here.
And breaking news involving a woman who claims Donald Trump raped her when she was 13.
Katie Johnson. I saw the whole video of Katie Johnson's deposition.
I met Donald Trump at some parties I attend that I was working for Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on, and he was kind of watching off in the distance, and he basically asked if I could come over and give him a hand job. At first, I wasn't very comfortable with it. This was like my first or second, first party, and I didn't think that was my responsibility. Before I gave him a hand job, he kind of slapped my hand away and said, "You need to use a glove." And the recruiter, he ran over and handed me a glove and said, "No one touches Mr. Trump's penis without a glove." Gave him a hand job, and then immediately after, he had an orgasm, he left, and I didn't see him again at that party.
She was a credible witness, and everything she said was verified by the FBI, but she disappeared. They've been threatened. Some of them have been unalived already because they came forward.
I came to this interview on my free will.
Well, Katie Johnson, the point about Katie Johnson is that her story was silenced.
Jeffrey Epstein is a billionaire friend of Donald Trump's, was responsible for throwing the sex parties.
At 4 different parties she was assaulted. Trump and Epstein were both there.
Came to New York trying to be a model. In my travels, I met a girl named Tiffany there who was very interested in me and said that she knew a lot of people that were higher ups and that it would be no problem. I would just basically have to come model at a couple of events and meet some people. Of course I went, that sounded like no big deal. She was recruiting the girls to come to these parties. Most of them were, my age. There was, maybe a couple girls that were maybe 14 or 15. Jeffrey Epstein knew that I was 13 years old. When he interviewed me, he asked me to get down to my bra, just my panties, and I thought that was weird, but modeling, maybe it was something about my figure. He asked that I give him a massage. So and then he asked me my age. He asked me, and I told him, told him that I was 13. I told him why I was there, and he basically said, "Well, you'll do. I'm sure that you'll fit pretty nicely here." And then he tried to slip himself inside of me, and I pushed him away. I told him that I wasn't interested in that. And as far as Donald Trump, he knew that I was 13, and I believe that Tiffany told him he seemed to take a liking to me because I was I was so young, and I was also a virgin.
And a man who was standing right next to me, who weighed about 350 pounds and wasn't a very attractive guy, said to me, "It could be worse, Donald. I've been in Aspen for 20 years and I've never had a date." And I'll never forget the statement.
Donald Trump knew that I was 13 because the first night that I was there, Tiffany actually suggested that she had a whole bunch of different wigs, and I expressed interest in them. I always told her that I would love to walk around with blue hair, and so I tried some on, and there was a blonde wig that she said that looked great on me. So I wore that wig, and Donald Trump had specifically asked about me because I remind him of his daughter, and she said, "Well, she's 13 as well." We went to the party that I was basically interviewing for, and Jeffrey Epstein was the one that was running the party. He had a quick meeting with everyone that was employed there, and then he had a private interview with me. So it was another massage, and it was basically like, it wasn't sex, but there was penetration, and I told him that I didn't want that, but he kind of got a little irritated. So I don't know, there was something about him. I guess I kind of held him, I held a lot of resentment towards him. Second time that I saw Mr. Trump, same scenario, he was onlooking at an orgy, and Tiffany came over to me and said that Donald Trump had requested that I perform oral sex on him. And I'd never done something like that with anybody, so I was a little nervous. So I walked up to him, and he was sitting there very proud, and I just kind of moved in that direction, and he kind of slapped me away and said, "What are you doing? You need to put a condom on," like I was some dirty filth or something without a condom. Apologized, and then I performed oral sex on him. And once he was done, he hopped up, and that's the last I saw of him at that party. Donald Trump was very racist. He said a lot of racist things. Like there was a lot of comments towards Mr. Epstein about being Jewish, and called him a Jew bastard. So that he was cheap, and there was some words I didn't even understand. Something about the shape of his penis being directly related to his mole, or I'm not too familiar with the Jewish traditions, but I'm pretty sure that whatever he was saying wasn't very nice. Also referred to people of Hispanic Hispanic made, they called them spics. That was around the first time that the World Trade Center had gotten the bomb in the 90s. And he was talking about the towel heads and how we would just be better off if we didn't let him in, or basically got rid of every single one that was already here. It made me really uncomfortable, really, really uncomfortable. He also loved to call black people niggers, and Arabic people he called sand niggers. The only time that he tried to give me some money was our last encounter together, where he acted out a rape fantasy. I was forced to give that money back because Jeffrey Epstein paid us after the party. It was a rape fantasy to him, but I wasn't playing. He had a fantasy where he walked in on his maids. It was basically he's walking in, his two maids. I was one of the maids. I was the white maid. And there was a Spanish girl, Maria, who was the Hispanic maid. And we were making out, and he walks in, and he gets really angry and threatens to call immigration on Maria if she doesn't come over and make things right and give him a blowjob. While she is over there giving him a blowjob, I am just trying to, I'm supposed to look scared, like, oh no, and cleaning up things and pretending like I'm trying to go back to my job as a maid. He slapped her away and said, what are you doing? You need to put a condom on, and she's trying to, I'm so sorry, and he's like, you can't even understand what you're saying, just speak English, And then he's like, you know what, you don't know what you're doing. Have her come over and show you how it's done. And I had to go over there, or else he was going to call immigration on Maria. I didn't know if it was true or not, but I felt that, he said that if I didn't show her how to perform oral sex on him, he was going to call immigration on her and then get rid of us both. Anything that was in relation to him getting off or being satisfied or happy had to do with him being in power, but extreme power. It was always intimidating when he was like that. It was always, you didn't really know if it was true or I mean, like if you refused to play along, would he really call immigration on Maria? Would he really get rid of us both? And I didn't even want to know what that meant. It wasn't a game. And actually, the maid fantasy, I didn't have a blonde wig on. I was trying to stay away from blonde wigs at the time. But he actually told Tiffany that that's what he wanted me to wear. I had it on and he'd see me, he would say, "Oh man, you look," and it wasn't like "Oh, you remind me of my daughter." It was this sick, evil, like, you remind me of my daughter. It was just this weird pleasure, sick smile. Like I don't even want to know what he was thinking about. I could imagine what he was thinking about. He approached me about a rape scene that was supposed to be played out, and I didn't like the sound of that at all. But Tiffany assured me that it wasn't going to be if it was anything I wasn't comfortable with. He came in and I was basically tied to a bed with pantyhose, and I tried to say something, and it was like, he just, shut up, shut up, bitch. This was basically like he was being really, really rough, and I understand. It just didn't seem like a fantasy, and I started to get scared, and he was, basically like ripping my clothes off, and I was actually I got freaked out. I told him that I didn't want to do this. I was, I screamed over for Tiffany. She was like, "Mr. Trump, she's only, this is scaring her." And he's like, "Oh, you shut up too." He just turned into this animal. It was like a completely different person. Like everyone in the room was scared of him. I couldn't do anything about it. He ripped off all my clothes, and he started to basically have sex with me, and I was screaming because I'd never had sex before. It was my first time, and Tiffany was yelling at him too. She was saying I was a virgin, and he told us to just shut the fuck up, and just basically took my virginity while I was crying and telling him to stop, and that's basically begging for him to just stop.
I have no doubt in my mind that she told the truth. That's a quote from Cheney Mason, the lawyer for the Jane Doe who accused President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein of rape in 2016, right before the general election. She said she was 13 years old, and it was in 1994 at Epstein's house.
Just before she was scheduled to provide her statement regarding her testimony that was about to be given, she abruptly canceled because she received death threats to her and her loved ones, and to the extent of my knowledge is still well, but in hiding.